I had this dream once, vivid, sharp, and almost prophetic. I was in our kitchen, the same place I used to slow dance with her at midnight after too much wine, and everything was silent except the ticking of the wall clock. I remember thinking, something's about to snap. I didn't know then that the dream wasn't a dream. It was a memory waiting to happen. 3 days before it all broke, she started humming. Not a melody I recognized, just a strange, unsettling tune under her breath. Like a lullaby for someone else. That morning she left the house in a rush, said she was late to a meeting that got moved up last minute. No kiss, no goodbye, just her scent lingering behind, mixed with notes of something unfamiliar, citrus and leather. I followed her that day. Not with a trench coat and binoculars. I'm not some dime novel cliché. I was just a man with a gut feeling and a rental car parked 4 blocks down from our place. She didn't take the freeway. She didn't go downtown. She didn't go anywhere near her job. Instead, she pulled into this sleepy residential street I'd never seen before, where every house looked borrowed from a catalog and every driveway was too clean. She rang a doorbell, waited, and then he opened the door. Tall, younger than me, clean-cut in a lazy way. She smiled, leaned in, and handed him something. His hand brushed hers, longer than it needed to. Then they both laughed, and the door closed behind them. I sat there for hours, gripping the steering wheel like it owed me something. I didn't know what to do with the silence. I didn't know who to be in that moment. Husband? Victim? Spy? I didn't go home that night. I checked into a motel off the highway, lay on that stiff, bleached bed staring at the ceiling, and played her laugh over and over in my head. I wondered how many times she'd used it on me, if it had always been fake. I ordered dinner, didn't eat it, called my brother, hung up before the first ring, started writing her a message, deleted every word. The next day, she came home pretending the world was unchanged. She brought takeout from that Thai place I loved. She never remembered the name of the dish, but somehow now she had it perfect. She made small talk like nothing in the world was out of place. But there was something in her eyes, too focused, too deliberate, like someone reading off a script. I smiled back, told her I had a surprise planned for her lunch break tomorrow, something she'd never forget. She giggled and asked if it was sushi. I said, no, better. She had no idea. I went back to that quiet street the next morning, waited again, and sure enough, she arrived like clockwork. But this time I didn't sit back. I waited until she was inside. Then I walked up to the house, knocked 3 times. The guy opened the door, surprised. His face dropped fast, like he knew exactly who I was without needing the introduction. I asked if he had something of mine inside. He stammered, called for her, and then she appeared, halfway down the hall, barefoot, wearing a hoodie I'd never seen before but somehow knew wasn't hers. She stopped dead. I said her name once, slowly. She didn't answer. I asked if she knew what today was. She said Wednesday. I said, it's the day I stopped being stupid. She tried to recover, laughed, said I was being dramatic, said it was a misunderstanding, that she'd come by to pick something up, that he was just a friend, that I should calm down, that I was overreacting, that I should leave. She turned to him and said, call someone. That's when I knew she didn't see me as her husband anymore. I wasn't even a person in her story, just a problem she wanted gone. Something in me switched off. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I left, and I went home, and I made sure when she returned, grinning from her lunch like she'd just tricked the world again, everything would be ready. Everything. She'd walk in thinking she still had the upper hand. Little did she know I had a lesson prepared that would shatter her. She walked in just past 1 p.m., humming again, flipping her hair like nothing in the world could touch her. There was a small stain on her sleeve, looked like coffee, but it didn't smell like coffee when she got closer. Her phone buzzed in her hand and she smiled at it in that sly, sideways way she used to smile at me when we were younger and still honest. This time, I knew that smile wasn't mine anymore. She didn't even look up when she said, "You're home early." I was sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where we used to plan vacations and argue over paint swatches. In front of me, her tablet, her work phone, and the little red notebook she thought I never noticed tucked away in her bedside drawer. Everything laid out neat, like exhibits in a trial. She froze when she saw it all. Her smile didn't drop, it vanished. Like it had never been real. She stood in the doorway, blinking, calculating. "What's this?" she asked, and her voice was flat, quiet, controlled. I didn't say anything right away, just pushed the notebook toward her with one finger. "I figured you'd want to read the last few entries," I said, calm. Too calm. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "You know, refresh your memory before you lie again." She didn't move, just stared. Then she laughed. Short, harsh. "You went through my stuff?" I nodded. "A few nights ago, after you told me you were working late and I tracked your phone to a hookah lounge." That hit her. Not because of the tracking, but because I said it out loud. She blinked. Once, twice, then finally walked over, picked up the notebook like it was going to bite her, flipped a few pages, saw her own handwriting. The names, the initials, the dates, the rating system. I watched her read the words she'd written. The kind of raw notes someone keeps when they don't expect to get caught. She'd listed things about him. And not just him. There were at least 2 more. Different cities, different meetings. She'd made a chart. A chart. Still, she tried to pivot. She closed the notebook slowly, set it down, folded her arms. "So what?" she said. "You don't talk to me anymore. You stopped touching me months ago. What did you think was going to happen?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But I didn't. I just said I thought you'd tell me. Before you turned our marriage into a goddamn scavenger hunt. She rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes like I was being unreasonable. Like the betrayal was a scratch on her new car instead of a knife in my ribs. "You think this is all about you?" she snapped. "You think I did this to hurt you?" "No," I said, standing now. "I think you did it because you don't feel anything unless someone's looking at you like they're starving. I think you liked watching me slowly unravel while you got to play perfect wife." She stepped back like I'd slapped her. Not because of the volume, my voice never rose, but because I wasn't broken. Not in the way she expected. Not in the way she'd prepared for. "You're insane," she whispered, as darting to the door like she was considering just leaving. "You've completely lost it." I leaned in, elbows on the table. "Not lost. Not anymore." She looked at the table. Then at me. Then back at the door. And then quietly she said, "So what now?" I stared at her for a long time. Then I told her everything I had planned. "Everything. You're not walking out of this untouched," I said, slowly, deliberately. "You thought you could rewrite the truth, that your secrets would stay folded between cheap hotel linens and locked phone screens. But I've turned every page. I know it all now. And I'm not just going to stand here and take it." Her face tightened, not with fear, no, she was never the fearful type, but with panic masked in defiance. The kind of panic that builds when someone realizes the audience isn't clapping anymore. "I want a divorce," I said calmly, watching her flinch just slightly, the first crack in her perfect, practiced indifference. "And I'm not leaving this house." "You are." She laughed, but it sounded dry, brittle. "You think you're kicking me out? This house is under my name too, or did you forget?" I leaned forward. "I didn't forget. But the name on the mortgage doesn't change what you've done inside these walls. You think a judge is going to look at your little adventure journal and hand you the keys?" Her lip curled slightly. "That's emotional. Irrelevant. Judges don't care about personal drama." "Maybe," I said. "But your boss might." That landed like a hammer. She stiffened, fingers twitching by her side. "You wouldn't," she said, barely above a whisper. "I would," I replied instantly. "And not just your boss. Your mother, your yoga instructor, your wine club, and whatever poor woman thinks you're her loyal bridesmaid next month." "You're threatening me now?" Her voice was rising, but her footing was shaky. "You're going to ruin my life?" "No," I said. "You did that. I'm just opening the curtains." She took a step back, shaking her head like I was a stranger in her kitchen. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally being honest after years of playing her loyal audience while she built a parallel life out of lies and giggles behind closed doors. "You planned this," she said finally. "You've been sitting on this, waiting to burn me." "I gave you chances," I snapped. "When you said you were tired, I gave you space. When you said you needed to find yourself, I didn't press. I trusted you like a fool." She walked toward the fridge, opened it like this was just another afternoon. poured herself a glass of juice like it would help her swallow the fire building behind her eyes. You act like you're some hero, she muttered. But you weren't perfect either. You were boring. Predictable. Emotionally dead half the time. I laughed low and bitter. No. I was stable. I was consistent. You confused stillness with emptiness because you only know how to chase chaos. We stared at each other, two people who once shared secrets under bedsheets, now throwing sharpened truths across the kitchen like darts. Then I pulled out the final folder from under the table. Photos. Not just blurry parking lot snapshots. No. Clear, time-stamped, location-tagged prints. Screenshots of texts. Calendar invites that didn't line up. A digital trail she'd buried under passwords and sweet-smelling distractions. She stared at the folder like it might hiss at her. You want to fight dirty? I said. Let's go. But I'm not the one covered in mud. For the first time, her voice cracked. You're enjoying this. No, I said, standing. But I've earned this. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there, holding the juice like it was the only thing anchoring her to the floor. And that's when I said it quietly but with a finality that shook even her. You should pack. The silence that followed was so thick I could hear the birds outside arguing in the tree. She stared at me for a long time, long enough for the ice in her glass to start melting. Then she turned and walked toward the bedroom. Not a word. And I stood there, wondering how long it would take her to understand that I hadn't just caught her. I had dismantled her. And we weren't even halfway done yet. She was in the bedroom for nearly 30 minutes. Not crying. Not panicking. Just still. I didn't hear drawers opening, no luggage unzipping, nothing. Like she was hoping if she stayed quiet long enough, I'd cool down. That maybe I'd reverse time and go back to being the idiot who made her tea when she came home late and smelled like betrayal. I walked in without knocking. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at it, her fingers hovering, frozen. She looked up at me, and there it was again, that performance face. That cold, detached calculation wrapped in fake softness. A woman who wanted to wear guilt without ever feeling it. I don't know where to go, she said. It was bait. Classic bait. A small voice, a damsel posture. Like maybe if she sounded fragile enough, I'd forget why we were here. I didn't even blink. That's not my problem anymore. She narrowed her eyes. You're not going to throw me out like some stranger. I took 2 steps closer, leaned on the doorframe. Then stop acting like one. She scoffed, turned her gaze to the nightstand, like she was searching for a comeback, a lifeline, anything. You knew I wasn't happy, she said, a little louder now, angrier. You knew it. You could feel it. But you just sat in it. You never fought for me. There it was. The shift. When guilt doesn't stick, blame gets loaded. I didn't realize I was in a competition, I said. Next time, should I have worn a name tag and a scoreboard? You don't get it, she snapped. You've been living in this bubble where you think being decent is enough. You think showing up is love. But it's not. And sneaking around behind my back, that is? I tilted my head. Let's not pretend you were searching for emotional fulfillment in the back seat of a stranger's car. Her face flushed. Red. Hot. Finally, the mask was starting to melt. I made a mistake, she hissed. No, I said, walking further into the room now. You made a choice. 12 times. Over and over again. And you kept making it even after the first moment you knew it would destroy everything. She stood up fast. You think I wanted it to go this way? I think you didn't care enough to stop it. She started pacing then. Hands flying, words spilling. Excuses, justifications, little rewrites of the truth dressed in the language of therapy and victimhood. She said I'd grown cold. She said she was scared of how numb things had gotten. She said the affair made her feel something again. You want to feel something? I barked. Here's a feeling, regret. And then I threw the curveball she wasn't expecting. I already talked to your friend Claire. She stopped mid-step. Turned slowly. You what? Yeah, I nodded. Called her this morning. She hasn't seen you in over a month. Said you stopped returning her texts. Guess that alibi expired. Her mouth opened. Closed. Tried to form something. You don't get to rewrite the story, I continued. You lied. You planned. And you thought I'd stay stupid just long enough to keep your 2 worlds balanced. She sat back down. Hard. Head in her hands. But I wasn't finished. There's more, I said. She didn't look up. I called your office too. Turns out those weekend conferences? They don't exist. Not this year. Not last year either. Now she did look up. You're lying, she said. But her voice cracked. No, I said. You did. I'm just dragging it into the light. She covered her face. And that's when I dropped the final match. I spoke to him too. Your little friend from the house. He didn't know you were married. Her body stiffened like someone had fired a shot across her spine. I gave him the whole story, I said. The real one. Told him you'd probably try to twist it when he heard from you next. Gave him a heads up. Just like I'm giving you one now. She looked like a person unraveling in slow motion. Like the scaffolding she'd built around her lies was collapsing with every word. And then, like it was the only thing left in her arsenal, she whispered, You still love me? I stared at her for what felt like a century. No, I said without hesitation. I loved the version of you that didn't exist. She didn't move, and I left her there, alone with the ghost of who she pretended to be. She didn't come out of the bedroom for hours after that. I heard her once opening a drawer, then closing it. Maybe packing. Maybe just sitting there trying to figure out how to save face when the world she built on smoke and mirrors had finally cracked in daylight. Meanwhile, I sat on the back patio. It was cold, but I didn't notice. My phone buzzed with texts from my brother, a missed call from work, a couple of friends who had no idea what kind of hurricane I just walked through. I didn't respond to any of them. I just stared at the sky and let myself feel the silence. Because this wasn't grief. Not exactly. It was clarity. Brutal, sudden, unsparing. Around 6, she came out. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She wasn't apologizing. She was dressed. Hair done, light makeup, leather purse in hand. She looked like she was heading to brunch, not walking out of a marriage. I'll stay at a hotel tonight, she said casually, like we were discussing dinner plans. Give you space. I didn't answer. Just nodded once. She stood there for a second longer, maybe waiting for me to say something else. But I didn't. So she turned to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. I'm not the only one who messed this up, you know. Still trying to shift the weight even now. Don't worry, I said, you've taken enough of the credit. She left without another word. And as soon as the door shut, I stood up, went to her closet, and pulled every shoebox off the top shelf. One by one, I emptied them onto the bed. Notes. Receipts. Airline stubs. Things she thought she'd tucked away from memory. I knew she'd come back for them, or maybe try to sneak someone else in later to collect the rest. So I took photos of everything, cataloged it, scanned what needed scanning, and locked the hard copies in a box I'd already moved to my office downtown. Let her wonder where it all went. She texted me an hour later, I think we need to talk about how to handle this maturely. Maturely? From the woman who cataloged her betrayals like souvenirs from a vacation. I didn't reply. Instead, I went into the guest room, the one we'd turned into storage, then promised to convert into an office, and started cleaning it out. Piece by piece, like shedding skin. I boxed up the wedding photos first. Our first home trinkets. That stupid heart-shaped rock we found at the lake and swore was a sign. All of it gone. Neatly packed, sealed, labeled. I wasn't burning it. I wasn't smashing it. I was preparing for her erasure. The next morning, she showed up again. Let herself in with her key, dressed like she hadn't missed a beat. She smelled like some new fragrance, something floral and sharp. A rebranding. She stood in the kitchen and had the audacity to say, I think we should go to counseling. At least to process this properly. I turned around from my coffee and just looked at her. I've already booked the lawyer. She blinked. So that's it? Was there something left you hadn't ruined yet? I asked. Because I'm sure I can give you another week if you want to try. Her eyes darkened. You're being cruel now. No, I said. I'm being done. She shook her head. Lips pressed together like she wanted to scream. But she didn't. She just stood there, staring at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. But the truth was, she never really did. She knew the version of me who kept quiet, who picked up the pieces while she went chasing her reflection in other people's eyes. The version who believed that love meant endurance, no matter the wound. That version was gone. And this version, this one had just begun. She didn't come out of the bedroom for hours after that. I heard her once, opening a drawer, then closing it. Maybe packing. Maybe just sitting there trying to figure out how to save face when the world she built on smoke and mirrors had finally cracked in daylight. Meanwhile, I sat on the back patio. It was cold, but I didn't notice. My phone buzzed with texts from my brother, a missed call from work, a couple of friends who had no idea what kind of hurricane I just walked through. I didn't respond to any of them. I just stared at the sky and let myself feel the silence. Because this wasn't grief. Not exactly. It was clarity. Brutal, sudden, unsparing. Around 6, she came out. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She wasn't apologizing. She was dressed. Hair done, light makeup, leather purse in hand. She looked like she was heading to brunch, not walking out of a marriage. "I'll stay at a hotel tonight," she said casually, like we were discussing dinner plans. "Give you space?" I didn't answer. Just nodded once. She stood there for a second longer, maybe waiting for me to say something else. But I didn't. So she turned to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. "I'm not the only one who messed this up, you know. Still trying to shift the weight even now." "Don't worry," I said. "You've taken enough of the credit." She left without another word. And as soon as the door shut, I stood up, went to her closet, and pulled every shoebox off the top shelf. One by one, I emptied them onto the bed. Notes, receipts, airline stubs, things she thought she'd tucked away from memory. I knew she'd come back for them, or maybe try to sneak someone else in later to collect the rest. So I took photos of everything, cataloged it, scanned what needed scanning, and locked the hard copies in a box I'd already moved to my office downtown. Let her wonder where it all went. She texted me an hour later. "I think we need to talk about how to handle this maturely." Maturely. From the woman who cataloged her betrayals like souvenirs from a vacation. I didn't reply. Instead, I went into the guest room, the one we turned into storage, then promised to convert into an office, and started cleaning it out. Piece by piece, like shedding skin. I boxed up the wedding photos first. Our first home trinkets. That stupid heart-shaped rock we found at the lake and swore was a sign. All of it gone. Neatly packed, sealed, labeled. I wasn't burning it. I wasn't smashing it. I was preparing for her erasure. The next morning, she showed up again. Let herself in with her key, dressed like she hadn't missed a beat. She smelled like some new fragrance, something floral and sharp. A rebranding. She stood in the kitchen and had the audacity to say, "I think we should go to counseling. At least to process this properly." I turned around from my coffee and just looked at her. "I've already booked the lawyer." She blinked. "So that's it? Was there something left you hadn't ruined yet?" I asked. "Because I'm sure I can give you another week if you want to try." Her eyes darkened. "You're being cruel now." "No," I said. "I'm being done." She shook her head, lips pressed together like she wanted to scream. But she didn't. She just stood there, staring at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. But the truth was, she never really did. She knew the version of me who kept quiet, who picked up the pieces while she went chasing her reflection in other people's eyes. The version who believed that love meant endurance, no matter the wound. That version was gone. And this version? This one had just begun. She stopped coming by after that morning. Maybe she realized the door wasn't just closed, it was welded shut. Or maybe she was too busy scrambling to rebuild her image somewhere else, feeding new lies to someone newer, someone unbroken, someone dumb enough to believe her smile meant safety. Either way, the silence was loud. And I liked it. For the first time in what felt like years, I could breathe in my own house. I started noticing things. Little things. The absence of her perfume clinging to the couch cushions. The quiet stillness after dinner where her voice used to fill the air with passive-aggressive commentary about work or other couples she thought were beneath her. The phone no longer buzzing face down on the table, guarding its secrets like a vault. It felt like detox. Like someone had removed a splinter I didn't know was buried under my skin. Then, just when I started to feel like I could maybe sleep again, she showed up. Unannounced. Late. Rainy Thursday night. I heard the knock and checked the doorbell camera first, old habits now. She was standing there in a black coat, hair wet, no umbrella, eyes puffy. She looked less polished than usual. Almost human. I didn't open right away. Let her stand in it for a while. When I finally opened the door, she tried to push past me without asking. I stepped in her way. She didn't expect that. Why are you here? I asked. She looked at me with eyes that used to convince me of anything. Not anymore. I needed to talk to you. In person. I didn't move. Talk. Can I at least come in? No, she exhaled like I was being childish. Look, I've been thinking, and I realized something. Was it about how to fake alibis better? Because you're a little late. Her jaw clenched. God. You always have to get in the last word. Don't you? I didn't answer. She went quiet for a second. Looked down, then back at me. I'm not proud of what I did, she said. I messed up. I was reckless. I was stupid. But I didn't stop loving you. I stared at her, dead in the eye. You don't do what you did to people you love. You do it to people you think won't fight back. Her lips trembled. The tears started then. I didn't flinch. I miss you, she whispered. You miss the version of me that kept giving you chances. I said, that guy's dead. You killed him. Remember? She stepped back, like the words hit harder than she expected. I thought maybe, she started, but I cut her off. No, you don't get to maybe your way back in. You had everything, and instead of protecting it, you fed it to strangers. You buried it under lies and came home with a smile like it was nothing. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. No, you're not, I said. You're sorry you lost control. Silence. Rain fell harder. Then, quietly, she asked the question that proved she hadn't learned a thing. Are you seeing someone? I laughed once. Cold. Hollow. Not everyone moves on by falling into someone else's bed. She blinked. I'm rebuilding, I said. Not replacing. She stepped back again, clutched her coat tighter, but she didn't leave yet. There's stuff I still need from the house. I nodded. Text me a list. I'll box it. You can pick it up from the porch. I don't get to come in? She asked. I shook my head slowly. You already did. And you burned it to the ground. She stood there a second longer. Rain soaking her hair, face crumbling, looking like someone who finally realized that bridges don't rebuild themselves. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't watch her go. I closed the door. And for the first time, I locked it without hesitation. A week passed. She didn't message. No texts. No calls. No requests for the rest of her things. It was almost suspicious how suddenly she'd vanished from the scene. For someone so obsessed with control, the silence felt like a calculated move, not surrender. I knew her well enough by now. When she goes quiet, it's not peace. It's preparation. So I waited. In the meantime, I kept moving. Changed the locks. Updated all the passwords. Took her name off the emergency contacts. Every little thing she'd woven into my world, I unwound thread by thread. I didn't want reminders. I didn't want traces. I wanted to scrub the entire house clean of her like a disease that had finally run its course. But then, just when the air started to taste normal again, she pulled a stunt I didn't see coming. I was at work, normal day, meetings, emails, the usual. My assistant buzzed in. Hey, there's someone here asking for you. She says it's urgent. My heart sank. I stepped out into the reception area, and there she was, dressed like she was auditioning for sympathy. Neutral tones, barely their makeup, eyes red like she hadn't slept, a reusable shopping bag on her arm. She smiled faintly, like this was a pop-in, like she hadn't detonated our life a few weeks prior. What are you doing here? I asked flatly. I figured you wouldn't respond to texts, she said. So I thought I'd drop these off in person. She lifted the bag slightly. Some things of yours. Stuff I had at my place. I didn't move to take it. This isn't your place anymore. She shrugged. It's just a bag. Nothing dramatic. Relax. I hated how calm she was pretending to be. Like we were acquaintances now, with mild inconveniences to settle. Like she hadn't tried to shatter me and then casually strolled back into my space. What's really in the bag? I asked. She smiled, but not with her mouth, only with her eyes. That cold, manipulative glint I'd seen when she was cornered but trying to charm her way out. You can look, she said, setting it down on the nearby table. Or I can just leave it. I didn't answer. I picked it up and unzipped it right there. Inside, one of my old college sweatshirts, a USB stick, a book she borrowed and never returned, and tucked deep at the bottom, a small leather-bound journal. Not mine. Hers. She watched me as I pulled it out. Said nothing. What is this? A peace offering, she said. Or maybe just a confession. I didn't know what to say. I didn't trust it. I'm not reading this, I said, holding it out to her. You will, she replied. Eventually. You'll want to know what I wrote. Then she leaned closer, lowered her voice to a whisper only I could hear. There are things in there even you don't know. Then she turned and left. Just like that. I stood there, clutching a piece of her mind in my hands, not sure if I was holding closure or a landmine. That night, I poured myself a drink. Sat at the kitchen table. Stared at the journal for a long, long time. Then I opened it. And I swear on the very first page, I saw something that made the air leave my lungs. Something that changed everything. And I knew the story wasn't done unraveling yet. The first page was dated 1.5 years ago. Sometimes I wonder if I'd miss him if he disappeared. Not died. Just vanished. Quietly. Would I cry? Or would I just finally breathe? My hands shook. Not because I was surprised. No, the shock had long since calcified into something else, deeper, colder. It was because reading her private thoughts felt like peeling skin off my own memories. Every moment I once believed was real now had a shadow. And that shadow had teeth. Page after page, she wrote not like someone trying to understand herself, but like someone chronicling a slow rebellion. Personal manifesto. She called it the in-between. That was her term for the time she spent suspended between who she pretended to be and who she wanted to become. Someone free of responsibility, untethered by expectations. She didn't just write about me. She wrote about the others. In detail. How she chose them. Why she picked one over the other. What she liked about the lies. She wrote about their houses, their routines, their personalities. One guy because he was reckless. The other because he made her feel unattainable. Another because he didn't ask questions. She compared them like options on a menu. And then there was an entry that stopped me cold. He'll find out eventually. I've left enough breadcrumbs. I wonder how long he'll stay once he does. Maybe he'll surprise me. Maybe he'll finally stop playing the nice guy. Maybe he'll destroy something. Maybe that's what it'll take for me to feel something real. She wanted me to break. This wasn't about boredom or emotional distance. This was a performance, and I was her unwilling co-star. The marriage was her stage, and my loyalty, my forgiveness, my confusion, all props in her show. And then, near the end, something else. The real fear isn't losing him. It's that he'll finally look at me without needing to forgive me. That he'll walk away like I never mattered. That I'll become nothing to someone who once held my entire world in his hands. That page? I read it 10 times. Because that's exactly what was happening. She had built her chaos around the idea that I'd always orbit her, no matter how far she spun out. She'd miscalculated. Badly. I closed the journal. Set it down like a verdict. And the very next morning I called her. She answered on the second ring. I read it, I said. She didn't speak. I know why you gave it to me. You thought it'd pull me back in. Make me feel responsible for the wreckage. Still nothing. But it didn't, I continued. It just made it clearer. She finally spoke, her voice tight. Clearer how? That I'm not broken because of what you did. I said. I'm stronger because I survived you. Silence. Then, I never wanted you to hate me. You didn't make it easy, I said. But here's the twist. You don't get to decide how you're remembered. Click. I didn't wait for her reply. I ended the call. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something close to peace. But I also knew people like her don't just fade away. They linger. And something told me. She wasn't finished. It was 2 days later when she struck again. This time, not with tears or twisted truths. Not with a journal or some desperate bid for closure. No, this time she sent her attorney. A letter arrived by courier, hand-delivered, crisp envelope, my name printed in ink like it belonged to someone else. Inside, a formal notice, cool and clinical. She was filing a claim for the house. Not half of it. All of it. According to her, she was entitled to full occupancy pending division of assets because she'd suffered emotional distress during the breakdown of the marriage. Distress. From the same woman who rated her secret flings in her notebook like Yelp reviews. The gall was almost impressive. Almost, but I didn't flinch. Not anymore. I read every line twice, then folded the letter, placed it gently beside my coffee mug, and called my lawyer. Bring everything, he said. Emails, journals, screenshots. Let's burn this to the foundation. That evening I boxed it all up. Everything she never thought I'd find. Everything she assumed I was too weak or too trusting to document. I added notes, annotations, timelines, cross-referenced dates. I became a historian of my own heartbreak. But there was one thing I hadn't touched yet. The USB drive. She'd slipped it into the bag beneath her journal like an afterthought or a trap. I hesitated for hours. Then, late into the night, I plugged it in. There were only 2 folders. One named Memories. The other, Proof. Inside Memories, videos. Us. Vacations, birthdays, Sunday mornings. Her laughing in the kitchen, her fake apologies after small fights, her arms around me like they meant anything. I watched 10 seconds of one, then clicked out. It felt like someone else's life now. Then I opened Proof. And everything changed. There were audio files. Dozens. She'd recorded me. Without my knowledge. Moments from arguments, conversations she twisted in the retelling. Her voice calm, mine tired, or angry, or too defeated to respond. Little sound bites she could weaponize if she ever needed to paint herself as the victim. But there was more. Recordings of her conversations with the men. And not the sweet, illicit whispers I might have expected. No. These were different. Darker. Candid. In one, she laughed about how easy I was to manipulate. In another, she said I could tell him I'm pregnant tomorrow and he'd believe it. He wants to save me. That's what makes it so easy. I stared at the screen. And for the first time I wasn't angry. I was disgusted. She had prepared for this moment long before I knew there was a war. Built herself a parachute while I was still building us a future. And now that she was falling, she thought she could pull the cord and float to safety while I hit the ground. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't beneath her anymore. I was watching from higher ground. So I copied every file. Every audio. Every photo. I made backups. Uploaded everything to a secure drive. And then I sat back and exhaled. She wanted a battle? She was getting a reckoning. But not in court. Not with screaming or threats. Something better. Something quiet. I had a plan now. And she would never see it coming. I waited until Friday. Not because it had any particular meaning, but because I wanted to give her the illusion that nothing was coming. That maybe I'd backed off. That maybe her little legal ambush had rattled me enough to go silent. I wanted her relaxed. I wanted her arrogant again. And Friday morning, I got exactly what I wanted. A text. As if the past month hadn't happened. I've been thinking, maybe we can talk. I'm open to mediation if you're willing to be fair. Fair. From the woman who handed me emotional shrapnel wrapped in charm and called it a marriage. I didn't reply. Instead, I pressed send on an email I'd been drafting for days. It went out to 6 recipients. My lawyer, her lawyer, HR at her company, and a few other names she wouldn't expect, but would absolutely care about. Attached were select audio files. Not all. Just enough. Her voice in her own words. The manipulation. The lies. The flippant cruelty. The way she described her relationships, her tactics. Her calculated commentary on me, on her job, on how easily people could be fooled if you smiled enough. Every file was time-stamped. Context provided. Dates matched to calendar invites and messages she sent. Her emotional distress claim evaporated the moment you heard her laugh while planning her next betrayal. I didn't even have to touch the journal. By noon, the fallout began. First came the email from her attorney. Suddenly, her tone had shifted. Given the new information, we believe it's in everyone's best interest to resolve this matter swiftly and amicably. Translation. She knew the house was lost. The sympathy angle was dead. There would be no courtroom tears. No narrative where I was the cold, detached husband and she the neglected wife. She destroyed that script herself word by word. Then came the text from her. I can't believe you did this. I didn't respond. Then another. You think you won? This just proves what kind of person you are. Still no reply. It went on. Paragraphs. Swings from guilt-tripping to begging to accusing. I read every one without a flicker of emotion. She was unraveling again. But this time, no audience, no stage. Just silence. By nightfall, I got one final message. You were never strong enough for me. That's why I left. That's why I had to look elsewhere. Because you never had what it takes to keep me. I stared at that message for a long time. And then, finally, I answered, you didn't leave. You lost. And I just stopped playing. I blocked her after that. Not in anger. Not in haste. Just in absolute, undebatable finality. Later that weekend, I walked through the house again. Felt different. Lighter. The shadows were still there, yes, but they no longer whispered. They no longer belonged to her. I donated the last of her things to a charity she used to scoff at. Took down the photos. Repainted the bedroom. Nothing dramatic, just necessary. Like airing out a room after a storm. She once wrote that her greatest fear was becoming nothing to me. And that's exactly what she became. Not fire. Not ice. Just nothing. I learned a lot. About silence. About clarity. About how love without respect is just a leash. And how sometimes the loudest strength is walking away without slamming the door. So here's my advice to anyone out there reading this. If you ever feel like you're being played, like someone is handing you pieces but hiding the box top, trust your gut. Start watching. Start listening. And when you know, really know, don't fight to fix them. Fight to free yourself. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't revenge. It's release. And walking away without a backward glance.